Jake Harmon had faced down warlords, infiltrated enemy strongholds, and survived under fire in some of the most dangerous parts of the world. But nothing had prepared him for the eerie stillness of his new neighborhood in Redwood Hollow. Years of black ops and clandestine missions, he had longed for normalcy. The kind of quiet life he could build with Mia and their newborn son, Ryan. A quiet cul-de-sac, lined with symmetrical houses and obsessively maintained lawns, had seemed like the ideal place to start fresh. It was the kind of community where neighbors waved at each other, kids rode bikes until sundown, and barbecues were a weekly tradition. Or at least that's what the real estate brochure had promised. In the first week, Jake noticed the unsettling perfection. Every house had the same approved paint colors. Every mailbox stood at precisely the same height. And every resident seemed to be watching as flicking behind curtains when someone walked by, conversation stopping abruptly when Jake approached. There was an artificial calm in the air, like a stage set too perfectly. Mia brushed it off as new neighborhood paranoia, the kind that wore off after a few friendly get-togethers. But Jake's instincts, honed over a decade in special forces, told him something was off. The first formal interaction came in the form of a thick, envelope-labeled HOA welcome packet dropped at their doorstep. Inside were pages of rules: no unapproved holiday decorations, no non-electric vehicles in the driveway, no unregistered persons on the property after 9 p.m. More curiously, there was a section titled Pediatric Compliance Guidelines, which detailed protocols for registering any newborns or children under 5 years old with the HOA's Health Oversight Board. It didn't make sense, and when Jake brought it up to Mia, she dismissed it as some overbearing community health initiative. He nodded, but didn't agree. Then came the night disturbances, small clicks outside the windows, the faint mechanical hum of something flying overhead. At 3 a.m. one morning, Jake slipped out of bed, grabbed his combat knife from the safe, and crept outside. A drone's leak, black, far more advanced than anything a suburban HOA should own, hovered above their backyard, scanning the baby's room with a pulsing blue light. Jake hurled a garden rake into its rotor, knocking it to the ground. Thing combusted before he could examine it, leaving behind only a scorched ring in the grass and the acrid scent of burnt circuitry. He reported it the next morning. Walking into the HOA's community center, a marble-floored building that looked more like a government agency than a local office, the receptionist, a pale, stiff woman in a gray suit, smiled too widely and told him the HOA had no drones in operation. "Perhaps you imagined it," she said in a tone that implied more warning than denial. Jake didn't press further yet. He returned home and doubled the camera coverage on the property. His gut told him that whatever was going on had something to do with Orion. Ever since they'd brought their son home, the surveillance had intensified. He remembered the nurse at the hospital commenting on Orion's unusually stable vitals, how alert he was for a newborn. Maybe someone flagged that. Maybe someone with access to medical records. The final sign came a day before Karen Templeton herself arrived. Jake found a small, thin device attached under the chassis of their car. It looked like a GPS tracker, military grade. He removed it carefully and ran it through a field test in his garage. It wasn't just a tracker, it was a biometric monitor keyed to infant vital signs. Jake stared at it for a long time, a chill rising through his spine. This wasn't just nosy neighbor behavior. Someone was watching his son, someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. And Jake Harmon was about to find out who. The knock came precisely at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, firm, deliberate, and lacking any warmth. Jake had just finished feeding Orion and was walking into the living room when Mia called out from the front door, her voice uncertain. "Jake, it's her, Karen from the HOA." He moved quickly, handing Orion gently to Mia and stepping too. The door standing on the front porch was Karen Templeton, flanked by two men in matching charcoal gray suits. She was exactly the way neighbors described her stiff blonde hair that didn't move in the breeze. Immaculate business attire and a permanent expression of superiority. Her HOA badge, a silver emblem with an eagle gripping a shield, gleamed on her chest, her eyes cold and precise, scanned Jake as if she were appraising a threat. "Good morning, Mr. Harmon," she said in a tone that made it sound like a legal summons rather than a greeting. "We've come to perform your family's compliance assessment." Jake tilted his head slightly, suppressing the smirk that wanted to emerge. "You mean the same one mentioned in the pediatric guidelines you slipped into our welcome packet?" Karen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just a routine procedure for new parents in our community. We prioritize child wellness and development. I'll need to see your son, Orion, is it?" Jake's jaw tightened. "We'll pass." Karen's smile faltered. One of the suited men took a half-step forward. "I insist," she said more sharply. "The HOA has full authority to conduct assessments for community safety. The longer you delay, the more concern it raises." Jake didn't move. His posture was relaxed, but his mind was already calculating strike zones, exit points, potential weapon grabs. "We've been here less than 2 weeks. You want to check our lawn care? Sure. But asking to inspect our newborn like he's part of a corporate asset list? No." The tension crackled like static between them. Karen finally broke the silence with a strained laugh. "Of course, just a misunderstanding, I'm sure, but refusal to comply may result in an automatic Level 1 citation." She handed Jake a folded document in HOA violation notice already filled out. His name, his address, a fine. And the words, "Known compliance with genetic data request." Jake didn't let it show on his face, but internally, alarms were blaring. Genetic data request? That wasn't just overreach. That was federal-level science fiction creeping into his suburban home. As Karen and her entourage turned to leave, one of the suited men glanced back at the house, not at Jake, but at the window where Mia held Orion in her arms. The man gave a slow nod, barely perceptible, and then followed Karen back down the walkway. That evening, Jake sat at his workbench in the garage, dismantling the strange tablet-like device Karen had dropped. With the citation notice. It wasn't a simple paper form, it had a digital chip embedded inside, one transmitting a low-frequency signal. When he cracked it open, the internal components pulsed briefly, as if alive. The data inside was encrypted, but he recognized the structure. It resembled the kind of code used in top-secret DoD biotech programs. What was an HOA doing with federal-grade encryption inside a violation notice? Mia was pacing in the living room. "Jake, what if they try to take him?" They were looking at him like he was a thing. Jake stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "They're after something. Orion's not normal, not in a bad way, but exceptional. And they know it." He paused. "They're not going to stop. And we're not going to run." His voice dropped to a hardened whisper. "If they come back, I won't be answering the door. I'll be defending this house." Outside, the streetlights flickered once, then glowed red for a brief moment, before returning to their usual pale orange.
Oh.
Jake noticed it. So did Karen, watching from her black SUV parked 3 houses away, eyes glowing faintly in the rear view mirror. Jake had broken into enemy camps, infiltrated war zones, and stolen classified data from high-security facilities. But nothing compared to the sheer psychological weight of breaking into the Redwood Hollow HOA administrative building. It was supposed to be a community center, a place for potlucks and neighborhood watch meetings. But Jake knew what lies looked like, and this building wore its mask poorly. He waited until midnight, when the street was silent and the motion sensors were predictable. Slipping through the maintenance entrance, he moved with the silent precision of his training. His black tactical clothing blended into the darkness, and his every step was calculated, every corner checked twice. He didn't need to guess where the sensitive data was. Kepti had scoped the building days earlier during community Matand. The second floor, west wing, behind a reinforced door, disguised as a janitorial closet, Jake bypassed. The retinal scanner using a pocket-sized biometric spoofing device, a little gift from a former NSA contact. The door clicked open, revealing a room that looked nothing like HOA storage. Cold white lights flicked on automatically as he stepped in. There were no lawn violation reports or landscaping guidelines here. Instead, row after row of hard drives. and encrypted data cores filled the space, humming like a server farm. The air was colder, clinical. He plugged his decryption tablet into one of the data cores and began scanning. His eyes darted across the screen as files opened one after another, most labeled with innocent names, but filled with ominous content. Census Redline Alpha. Subject classifications. Neonatal. Eden Project Phase 2. Hit him like a hammer to the chest. Eden Project. He had heard that name before. Whispers during covert ops. Files that mysteriously vanished. Agents who disappeared after. Asking too many questions. It was supposed to be a myth. The project, as far as he could tell, was a government-led bioengineering initiative from the late 1990s designed to create humans with enhanced resilience, intelligence, and adaptive DNA. The subjects were selected through discrete experimental programs, often disguised as fertility treatments or prenatal research studies. Most were unaware they'd been part of anything at all. The goal was to slowly seed the population with a new generation of evolved humans quietly, without chaos. And now, those children had grown up and started families. Jake scrolled until he found a file tagged with Mia's maiden name. Subject. Lineage. Eden host Mia Langford Harmon. She had been a second-generation carrier. She never knew it. And Orion. Orion was third generation, the first successful convergence of enhanced gene clusters. The perfect heir to Eden's dark legacy. Jake's mind raced as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a coincidence. They hadn't just randomly moved into a paranoid neighborhood. They had been placed, tracked, targeted. The final file sealed his rage. It was a live dossier titled Reclamation Status. Orion Harmon, Asset. Designate 001A. Karen Templeton had signed off on it. There was even a planned extraction date 2 weeks from now. The words Compliance Failsafe Activated glowed in red at the bottom of the document. A soft peeping sound caught his attention. Movement. Security Jake yanked his device free and shut everything down in seconds. With a silent sprint, he slipped out through the same maintenance entrance just as the building powered up again. Cameras rebooted, lights flickered. But Jake was already gone, disappearing into the shadows of manicured hedges and geometrically perfect driveways. Back. At home, he held Orion close in the dim light of the nursery. The baby blinked up at him, calm and curious, completely unaware of the storm circling outside their walls. They think you belong to them, Jake whispered, his voice low and deadly. But they have no idea who they're dealing with. He turned to Mia, who had been silently listening from the doorway. Her expression was pale, but her eyes were burning with resolve. We fight, she said simply. Jake nodded. We fight. They came just before dawn. Jake had been expecting it. For the past 3 nights, he hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. Every shadow was a threat, every unfamiliar noise a signal. He had turned their house into a fortress, reinforced locks, blackout panels, motion-triggered lights, signal, jammers, and old sealed tricks like decoy body heat signatures and magnetic traps. But he knew none of it would stop what was coming. It would only slow them down. At 4:17 a.m., the motion sensors on the eastern side tripped. A silent alert buzzed on Jake's wristwatch. He didn't need to look to know they were here. We're early. He slid out of bed, pressed a kiss to Mia's forehead, and gave her a quick nod. She was already awake. Clutching Orion in a sling across her chest and holding a portable drive in her other hand, the one with the decrypted Eden files. She had one job: protect the baby and escape through the tunnel he had dug under the garage. 2 weeks earlier, Jake walked to the living room and stood by the front door. He could hear them outside, his heavy boots on concrete, muffled voices. And then a polite knock, followed by a metal battering ram hitting the door 2 seconds later. The door didn't give on the first hit, which told Jake his modifications had worked. On the second hit, the frame cracked, waited until the third, and final blow, then hit the power kill switch, plunging the entire house into darkness and cutting off the intruder's night vision systems. She had learned were synced to external lighting. In the 2 seconds of confusion, he moved. Smoke bombs rolled from the walls, disorienting the first wave of the team. Jake emerged from behind a false wall and took down the first two in a blur of motion. No lethal force yet, just swift, brutal incapacitation. These weren't local police or hired security. These were trained operatives in HOA uniforms, compliance enforcers, highly equipped with shock gloves and dart rifles. They weren't here to talk. The third man came in through the back, flanking from the kitchen, but Jake was already there, slamming him with a steel pipe wrapped in foam to mute the blow. The man hit the tile with a grunt, twitching. Jake retrieved the man's earpiece and clipped it to his own ear. "We're in," a voice crackled through the channel. "Target confirmed." Jake spoke clearly into the mic. "Negative. Containment failed. Operatives down. It's just retreat before extraction goes sideways." There was silence on the line, then a low voice he recognized. "Karen, Mr. Harmon," she said, her voice maddeningly calm. "You're making this much harder than it has to be. Orion isn't your property. He's not even your son, biologically speaking. It's a government prototype. Phase 3 begins with him. Can't stop evolution." Jake ground his teeth. "If evolution means turning kids into lab assets, then I'll burn your program to the ground." He moved quickly, backtracking to the tunnel entrance. Mia had already slipped through it, sealing the hatch behind her. Jake rigged the decoy crib with a thermal pack, making it look like Orion was still inside, then slipped out the hidden side door. But he didn't go far. Instead, he climbed onto the roof, silent as a shadow, and watched as Karen and her team swarmed inside. He waited until they clustered around the false signal, then triggered the trap, a high-frequency burst that fried every piece of their tech. Sparks lit up the nursery like a firestorm. Screams of confusion rang out as drones crashed into walls and comms went dead. Jake launched a smoke flare from the rooftop as a final message. They weren't safe yet, but they had bought time, and Jake Harmon was just getting started. The smoke still lingered over Redwood Hollow as the sun rose, casting long shadows across the fractured perfection of the suburban battlefield. Sirens were oddly absent. No neighbors emerged from their pristine homes. No one called the police. It was as if the entire neighborhood had agreed, either by fear or design, to pretend nothing had happened. That was the nature of control here. Silent compliance. Jake had regrouped with Mia and Orion at a safe house located 15 miles outside the city, a place owned by one of his old teammates, a former Navy SEAL turned off-the-grid survivalist. The compound was secure, shielded by signal jammers, and fortified well beyond any building code. For the first time in weeks, Jake let out a slow breath, but only one. There was still too much at stake. Mia, sitting on the worn leather couch, cradled Orion while examining the decrypted data drive again. "There's more here than just Redwood Hollow," she said quietly. "There are files on every major suburb. In the country, hundreds of them. Every one of them with a list of flagged children born in the last 5 years. It's not just an isolated program. It's a nationwide sweep." Jake looked over her shoulder at the files she pulled up. Maps, genetic code overlays, timelines, and one folder labeled Phase 3. Activation Protocol. It was dated 2 weeks from today. In 2 weeks, these compliance enforcers wouldn't just show up in one neighborhood. They'd move everywhere. At once. Coordinated extraction of children deemed genetically critical. Families would wake up to find their kids gone, their homes replaced by silence and denials. Jake's jaw tightened. "We're not just escaping this. We're going to end it." He made contact with 3 former team members, Blackbird, Razor, and Cass. Each had gone dark after their own run-ins with government black projects. They believed him immediately. Within 24 hours, they had assembled a strike team, each member bringing encrypted comms, military-grade gear, and the same burning desire to dismantle the machine that had betrayed them. Their target, the Central Server Hub for Eden Project operations, located beneath what appeared to be a Department of Agriculture facility in northern Nevada. According to the data Mia decrypted, it was where all genetic tracking, AI analysis, and drone command originated. If they could destroy it, leak the Eden documents to the public, they could collapse the entire system in one blow. The infiltration was a precision operation. Jake led the team underground through the facility's maintenance shafts, while Mia remotely flooded the system with false child profiles to overwhelm the servers. They encountered automated defenses, AI drones, and synthetic operatives like Karen, except now it was clear she had never been human. She was one of the many biosynthetic guardians created to protect the program. In the heart of the facility, they planted EMP disruptors, downloaded all classified documentation, and set the building to overload. But as they evacuated, one last message appeared on the screen broadcast across every monitor in the hub. It was Karen. Her face was calm. It's unburned from their previous encounter. Her voice is cold as steel. You have won a battle, but not the war. Phase 3 was a distraction. Phase 4 is already alive. And you'll find it in every city, every school, every nursery. You cannot stop what has already evolved. Then the countdown ended. The EMPs detonated, the servers fried. And the Eden Project's head,